Welcome to Tales, Tunes, and Tomfoolery starring Jerry Springer, along with Gene Galvin and me. I'm Megan Hills. We're recorded live in front of a brilliant studio audience at the Folk School Coffee Parlor in Ludlow, Kentucky.
My daddy came
And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jerry Springer.
Oh, thank you. How come you never say the brilliant Jerry Springer? I mean, you say all of them, they're brilliant.
We're about truth here, sir. We like to keep it honest.
I forgot that.
Got ya.
Hey, here's some more truth. I was watching Jimmy Kimmel the other night, and Snoop Dogg was on. Snoop Dogg, they revealed the fact that Snoop Dogg is getting a star in Hollywood.
On the Walk of Fame.
On the Walk of Fame.
Yeah. Where's
that
yours?
Made me think, well, that I didn't know. And I don't want to embarrass him by asking in front of a lot of people. But Megan, do you know whether he does or doesn't have
I'm
a
judging
star?
by that face. He probably doesn't. He looks a little sad.
Well, there have been a bunch of people that want to see me in concrete. I've been offered that.
Yeah.
Just face down. And
Would you?
No, I didn't get that.
Would you authorize me? You know, I'm the one that went out and fronted for you to get you on Running Wild with Bear Grylls.
That worked really well.
I was going to say, that
Haven't
went
made
really
that
well,
happen yet.
Gene.
But what if I
never
made
mind.
the pitch to them, nosed around a little bit on the internets to try to get you one of those stars? I'll tell you how I would argue the case.
Yeah,
I'll
I just thought it'd be
something.
interesting.
Number one,
Yes.
you're on. Well, we're doing this show. What's the date today?
The 11th.
April 11th.
All right, so if you're listening live today or watching on Facebook Live, say hello to all the people in Facebook land. So it's April 11th. So
Yes.
on the Sunday following April 11th, you're doing Drop the Mic with Ricki Lake.
Yeah.
That's significant.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Why? Because I dropped the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
Oh, yeah, that's the rap show. Right. It's
the rap show.
Yeah, that was good. That was fun.
Here's another reason why you're
I can't
worthy.
tell you how I did.
I don't have to watch it today. I bet I don't have to watch
Okay,
it.
spoiler alert. Go ahead.
There's another reason why I think
Yes.
you're worthy.
Yeah.
So last week I got invited along with a guy named Neil Craig, who was defensive safety for the Cincinnati Bengals back in the early days,
sure.
National Football League,
Yeah.
to go down and talk to prisoners at this prison. I won't name it, but this regional prison. It's a media maximum security prison.
Right.
So I go down there. I'm going to talk about the changing media landscape. He's going to talk about the NFL. And we're walking across the yard, and some guys are walking past us going the other direction. And the guys in the group started, Jerry.
Why?
First, I thought, what the hell's that all about?
Yeah.
I guess they recognized you.
They had heard from somebody who had one of the inmates who
Got
had
it.
organized this, who
Okay.
had requested that we come down there.
About
And
the
they said
podcast.
that's a Jerry Springer guy. May have said specifically the podcast.
Got it.
But so I talked to these guys, and there were hundreds of them in a gym, in the prison gym, all on one side in the bleachers, and we were at a table like this with a microphone. And in the Q&A session, I talked a little bit about, Jerry Springer, and and some of them have been there for many years. The guy that I knew, through his brother, 40 years.
Wow.
Long time. And by the way, prisoners have access to terrestrial radio, TV, newspaper, and visitors. That's
Yes.
how they get their info. No internet.
Right.
They've heard about the internet, but
Sure.
they don't know what the internet is.
Yeah.
So
Is that like a nationwide thing, or is that specifically at this prison? Do you know?
I don't know.
My guess is it's probably nationwide,
Nationwide.
just because of how the internet could be used.
Sure.
There'd be security issues, I guess.
And I agree with that. I think, but that's an easy question to answer.
Yeah.
I didn't ask it. But they knew Jerry Springer and revered him.
Well, there you go.
So give me a damn star.
Hey,
Give me a star.
Wow.
that,
Give my bro a star.
well, the truth is, that is our basic audience.
All right. Either people who are in
Yeah.
or who are headed there. So,
Both.
no.
People in prison are, and that's where we get most of our guests.
Well.
When they come out.
Yeah.
That's the transition program.
Wow.
You don't just go out into the real world. You
go-
come
you
out of
filter
prison.
through the Springer
You come
show
on our
first.
show. If you survive our show, then you get 2 weeks in.
And you want to know something? I had then sent a letter down to the prison
Yeah.
officials, and I assume it's going to go to the warden, requesting, and I offered, during the Q&A session, this is interesting, it has to do with a podcast. A guy says in the Q&A, because I talked about my life's work before this was as an educator, so I could help you work on. I've called you and said, you're HR person. Maybe we get some volunteer thing going down there to this place, and we go there regularly. I would be willing to go weekly and volunteer to do stuff, whether it's working on writing skills, resume building, whatever, literature analysis. But this guy said, would you help us here start a podcast? They don't have the internet, but he said, would you help us start a podcast? And I said, hell yeah.
Yeah.
What are you
That's
talking
great.
about?
Well, what's
Great
the one
idea.
that you and I had talked about out
Well,
of
then
San
this
Quentin?
guy says, because I said, well, could you do such a thing? And he says, well, have you heard the one at San Quentin called ear hustle, which is
so
a slang
good.
term in prison for eavesdropping, ear hustle.
Yep.
Well, I came home and listened to it. It's amazing.
It really is.
Because I told these guys, all these guys are in the bleachers, and I said, you guys, I know without talking to any of you, you have incredible stories that people would, no pun intended, die to hear.
Yep.
And some of them are going to be horrible, and some are going to be tragic. Some are going to be not your crimes, but your life hilarious. And listening to Ear Hustle, and I said we would cross promote it on our show.
Sure.
We put you on our website to get it started.
That'd be so
we
cool.
would come to. I said we'll bring the Jerry Springer podcast down here if they'll let us. And this is what I offered in this letter. I said we'll come down and do a show. We'll come down and have Jerry Springer simply do a talk like I did. And they
How
would-
sure can I be they're going to let me out?
Yeah.
Well,
We didn't get
this
to that
is
part yet, so
this
here's
is
the
a
deal.
setup. Hey, Jer, why don't you come and
go
speak
visit
to
a
our
prison.
people? Clank the doors behind you.
I never thought of that. That's pretty cool. But anyway, so we'll see what comes of that. But I really like this place, to be honest.
Yeah.
Sounds crazy, but it looked to me like it was very well run, and it was a pretty powerful experience. Just
It is. It's
we hung out afterwards and talked one-on-one with a lot of people. Like two guys said to me, I said, where are you from before you came here? And they said, Louisville. I said, I hate Louisville. So what the hell do you have against Louisville? I said, you stole my basketball coach. Oh, yeah, Chris Mack from Xavier. They knew the whole Xavier thing. They knew, and even though they don't have the internet, they knew a lot of stuff.
Did you know what this guy was in for?
No,
I would have checked it out before you said you hated Louisville.
You know what? You know,
Gene's not really good at that
you know.
whole looking before you leap thing.
No.
He's
If
really more of a just get in there
If he
and do
was
it
in
guy.
for bank crimes, okay. But
you know
if he
what?
was in for something else.
Right?
They were coming up, lining up to talk to either Neil Craig about football or me about and then switching over. And I said to a guy, I don't know if this is appropriate to ask, but and if it's not, just don't answer it. But what are you in for? And this was a guy who came in with a walker with wheels. This was like an old man. And he paused and he said, it's appropriate. You know, I've got to deal with this. And I said, when are you getting out? And he said, when I die. I'm in here for the rest of my life and have been since I was 36.
Wow.
He looked like he was about 70. And he said, I killed my daughter. Like, oh my God. And he got teary as he told me that and said, it of course, changed my life. And you can't, it is what it is. It happened. Other guy said, I participated in a robbery in which somebody died. I mean, it's a hard, and then you drive home thinking, my God, I'm going back to freedom where I can get onto the internet immediately and listen to Ear Hustle.
Yep. Heck, on the
Holy
way to the
crap.
car, you can pull it up on your phone.
Yep.
It's unbelievable.
So I would hope that maybe we can get something going, and others will determine that. Here's another reason why I would give you a star.
That was
He
the
is
first
so lucky to have a friend like you. I got to
Here's
tell
another
you.
one, Jerry. Listen to this, Megan. I don't think you know about this.
Uh-oh.
The other day, Jerry gets a call from the freaking U.S. ambassador from Australia asking if he can
The
have
Australian ambassador to the United States.
ambassador to the United States, and he asked Jerry if he can have dinner with him. What the heck? I mean, did you get? I don't get calls
I get
like
no
that.
calls like that. No, I get calls from you saying, "Hey, you want to go to a prison?"
Yeah,
That's what
right.
I get.
Yeah.
Those
That's
are
all
the
I
phone calls
got.
get.
That's all I got.
Oh, you didn't get a call from an ambassador?
No. No. So what was that all?
Yeah, actually, it came out of nowhere. He called at the show and said, "Could I have a dinner with with Jerry Springer?" And he is the Australian ambassador to the United States.
Yep.
So cool.
And so, let me check my schedule. So no.
We're
So I
watching
said, yeah,
Suits
but
tonight.
for a week I've been thinking, what could this possibly be about? And so last night in New York, he meets me at the restaurant. It's Ambassador Joe Hackey, the Australian ambassador, and he had been, in the Australian government. I mean, really high up. He was the foreign minister, the comparable to the Secretary of the Treasury, defense minister, and in Parliament he lost by one vote to be the Prime Minister of Australia. So I mean,
Wow.
big time. I mean,
Yeah.
and so and he was just the nicest guy. And he looked like a regular guy. I mean, he wasn't there as you'd think an ambassador all hoity-toity. He was just a regular guy. And I said, this is wonderful. But in the middle of the dinner, I said, what's prompting this? Why would you? He says, well, I'm a little embarrassed, but, and I figured, he's going to tell me this great story to be on the show. So
Jerry Springer,
he
the
says,
international edition.
we had, for the 20 years that I was in the Australian Parliament, they have a room where all the ministers, ministers, the men and the women, they kind of relax, in between votes and stuff like that. And every morning at 11 o'clock, our show is on. So he said, he says, honestly,
serious?
for 15, 20 years, I've watched your show. And
With other diplomats.
Yes. And I've become a big fan of the show. So when I had my retirement from the Parliament, that's when he then became the ambassador to the United States. He said part of my speech to the whole Parliament was I have wonderful memories of this place. Number one was watching the Jerry Springer show, and everybody just roared. So I said, once
That
in my
is
life,
unbelievable.
he says, you're on my bucket list, and
No kidding.
and this is and he was just we talked a lot of politics and all that.
That's really cool.
And then he invited me
That's
to
unbelievable.
It's really cool.
to go on a speaking tour. He said Australians are fascinated with American, not only pop culture but American politics
Are they?
now. I mean, they're obsessed with that, and he'd like to have me come to Australia and do like a 2-week speaking tour at the various universities there on American.
Now, did he know before you guys talked, like your political background?
Yeah,
He did
yeah.
know all of that?
He knew it. I mean, he was asking me questions that made me nervous. I kept thinking there's a hidden mic someplace.
See,
But,
it's funny. I'm always thinking like a producer. I will take a cut of this episode
and put it on.
and put that in the exhibits
The
that I will
reel.
send to whoever the hell runs the
Yeah.
Walk of Fame or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
that-
will ask him to. Here's the
so
thing.
maybe he'll write a letter that I could put into the box that I'll
Yeah.
send him.
Oh, I thought you said I should have mentioned, will you come on our podcast?
We should have
He sounds good, but Paul McCartney is my goal. No offense.
You haven't heard this guy sing.
Yeah.
Actually, he was really, this totally nice
Yeah.
guy.
No,
That's really
other
neat.
than obviously very accomplished. But
Yeah.
so anyway.
Well.
So who did you have dinner with last night, Gene?
Nobody. I mean, my wife was she's a dance teacher and she was teaching. Basically nobody.
Basically.
It was pretty pathetic. It's as pathetic as you can picture it.
TV dinner on the couch. Like,
TV dinner.
Yeah.
TV dinner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And the microwave, you can get it in about 11 minutes. Well, 11
Yeah.
minutes exactly. You have to stop
the
it
veal
halfway
parmesan,
through.
isn't that
well,
good?
you have
Will
to
you
peel
jerk
back the
Right.
paper off
The-
or something.
the
Yeah.
aluminum, yeah.
It was wonderful.
For the dessert, not for the whole.
No. Yeah, for the dessert. Zinos.
Wow. This is a whole thing that we're talking
came
about right
with-
now.
That was
This
my
is
first
really
dinner.
happening.
That was my first dinner with Mickey.
A TV dinner?
Yeah.
I invited her to the apartment. Maybe our third date or whatever. And I said, "Why don't you come?
I'm going to cook for you.
I did say I'm going to make some dinner. I didn't have a clue how to cook, so I had a Swanson
Swanson
TV dinner.
TV dinner.
Yeah.
But when it got out, and back then we didn't have microwaves. It was
In the oven.
In the oven.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you kept it in for 15, 20 minutes or whatever. When it came out, because I'm a classy guy, I had a paper plate, and I took it out and I put it on the plate, so it didn't look like it was coming out of that.
Serve it in the aluminum.
And I had it on one of those wicker things underneath.
Again, a lucky gal. Just lucky, man.
And she now tells me, I had no idea that this was kind of silly. I mean, I was really proud.
Oh,
I know, yeah.
Oh, that's sad.
You know,
yeah.
and we had ho-hos for dessert. I swear.
I believe
this is
you.
not an embellished story.
I believe you.
This is God's truth.
You know, what's interesting is he and I both came from nowhere.
Yeah.
And I'm still nowhere. but we both came from the same place. No.
But now you get to use a microwave instead of the oven for your
life
TV
is a lot
dinner.
better. So Sinclair Broadcasting made me think also of Springer because he was a news anchor in Cincinnati for a bunch of years, the NBC affiliate. And in Cincinnati and across the country, if you've been following this too, Megan, Sinclair Broadcasting is requiring its news anchors to read this script, which are the talking points of Donald Trump, fake news and all this stuff. And it made me think, Jerry, of the time, well, let's just go forward, and you were still a news anchor, because news anchors, is it not true, in a city will be that for their lives. It's a great job. And there's a trust thing. So we know personally some anchors who were anchors when you were around, and they still are.
Yeah.
Been there 20, 30 years.
Yeah, Rob Braun, Bob's son. Yeah.
He actually is at the station where this is happening in Cincinnati, and Channel 12 in Cincinnati, and he is one of the people who was required to read the script.
Ooh, did he?
He did. So and I think people know this story. Sinclair is a national company largely of local TV stations. In their newsrooms, they've required this corporate written script to be read during the newscasts, as well as putting on some must-run stories that come from corporate. So corporate is reaching into the local levels with a corporate message. What's your take on that?
And a message that's very conservative, very, let's be honest, pro-Trump, talking about fake news and stuff like that. Look, any company has a right. It's their company. They can do what they want. But the news people, they're journalists. And they have an ethic to follow. They have, it's certain things you don't do in journalism. For years, stations would have their editorials, but it was always the general manager or the station manager. So if Sinclair wants to promote a particular message, it's a free country. They own the station. They can promote whatever message they want, but it ought to be someone representing the station. When you have a news anchor do it, all of a sudden you undercut the whole credibility of what they're doing with the news. So my gut tells me, and the closest I got to that situation, is that, if I were ordered to read a certain thing, I wouldn't do it. And I say, because I ran into that situation. I used to do commentaries on the local news. People outside the Cincinnati area don't know that. But I used to do commentaries at the end of every newscast. And one night...
That you wrote, though.
Yeah.
Corporate did.
Oh, yeah. The deal was only that I would write my own commentaries and only I could see them. That they were not allowed to have any editorial control, not even the subject matter, because that might create pressure. So, and they were happy with that, frankly, so that they could say, that's Springer, that's not us. So that was the rule. And one night, it was a Monday night, and we were an NBC affiliate, and they ran a movie on Roe versus Wade. And this was in the 1980s. Must have been. That's when I was anchoring the news. So it was in the 1980s. They did a movie on Roe versus Wade. Cincinnati, at least at that time, was a highly conservative neighborhood, city, strong Catholic population, and clearly opposed to choice. The majority of the people were opposed to choice. So the idea that NBC, the local affiliate, would run a movie on Roe versus Wade created a lot of protest. And in fact, there were protesters outside the building that night. And the general manager, who was at home at the time, was getting bombarded with phone calls. How dare you run this movie, et cetera. And he was just getting blasted. But in fairness, NBC was very courageous to not be influenced by that. They were going to run the movie. That's what was scheduled. And you could like the movie, or that's why God gave us remote control, turn to another channel. So that happened. Then it's time for us to do the news. And towards the end of the newscast, Norma, the co-anchor, would, just before the commercial break, read something that I just gave her, which would simply say, when we come back, Jerry's going to do his commentary on Roe versus Wade, the movie Roe versus Wade. Well, the general manager at home, hearing that, went ballistic. And because he has gone through a whole day of this, and now I'm going to make it worse. I didn't know that it happened. I just innocently wrote a commentary, in a sense, praising NBC for having the guts to do that. So he calls from home into the control room to the young director in the control room. You remember Dave Shuttlecotty, right? And pull his commentary. Because back then, we read from a teleprompter. I would write the script, and then the teleprompters were such that it was like a conveyor belt in a grocery store, and you put your 8x11 sheets of your typewritten words one at a time, and there'd be an intern that would place the papers down one at a time with a little camera facing down as your script went by. So when I'm looking at the TV camera, I'm seeing my words go by. So all of a sudden, as I'm getting ready to do it during the commercial break, I see a hand pulling out the script. And then in my earpiece, Dave says to me, Jerry, we just got a call from Tony. He was the general manager. You can't read your commentary. We're going to put another one in. And I said, what? He says, he doesn't want you to read it. Well, I knew that my arrangement with the station was that there would be no editorial control over my commentary. And I didn't yell or anything, and I just say, Dave, put it through, or when the camera comes back after the commercials, I'm going to sit here and say nothing. You're going to have 2 minutes of just looking at my face. And Dave, the poor guy, put him in a horrible position. He's probably around 28 years old at the time. He's got the GM screaming at him from home, pull it. He's got the main anchor there, saying, I'm not going to read it. What did it do? He says, oh, Jer, please, please. And I said, I can't, Dave. So they start running commercials. And it's supposed to be a 2-minute commercial break, but now they're throwing other commercials in. This was in January, and they threw in a safe boating ad.
Anything we got.
Safe boating ad in January in Cincinnati, and all they're just saying, well, they did another 2 or 2.5 minutes of commercials. They never came back. And then when they finally did come back, it was the end of the newscast, and Norma just said, good night, everybody. So when it was over, then I just took off my mic, and I just realized I had just been fired. So I said, that's it. And, I guess they'll call me tomorrow or whatever, but I'm gone. So I wasn't thinking of the consequences of that. I wasn't just being a hero. It was just something that we had agreed, and I wouldn't have commentary anymore if the station was allowed to say what I wanted to say. And so I went, and by the time I got home, Mickey's saying, oh, they're calling, don't come in tomorrow morning, at least talk to the general manager and the owner of this station. He wants to meet with you tomorrow at 9:30. At least come in for that. So, and I did. And the next morning, God bless the station, the owner brought in the general manager and me and sat down, and he said, the general manager, the news director, the general manager wants to say something to you. And then he said, I'm sorry, you have a right to say whatever you want. That is the deal we made, et cetera. So they were great. They stood by me. And then the next day I got to read the commentary that they wouldn't let me read the night before, which ironically was praising the station for having the guts to run the thing. It's a long-winded story, but it says if you're going to choose that as your profession, then at some point, now it's easy for me to say, and back then I didn't think of the consequences. If I really realized that I was putting my job really in jeopardy, and where was my income going to come from, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not here to criticize anyone because I don't know their family situation and how badly they need this job, and there aren't tons of those jobs around. So I don't want to get up on a high horse. I can't believe they did that, but clearly, the answer to the issue is if you want that written, have the general manager of the station say, this is a statement from Sinclair or whatever it is, and read it. Just be honest about who wrote it. Don't pretend that this is the view of the journalist, because then you're never going to know if what the journalist is telling you is what is true or what he's being told to say. And I think that
Well, it's interesting in the aftermath of it because Media Matters, I think it's Media Matters did this, and they put together a conglomerate of all of these journalists doing this across the country, and it made it look ridiculous because they made it transparent.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, and it runs for 2.5 minutes or so, and they just keep every sentence as being said by 5 people, 10 people, 50 people, and journalism school, university level heads from a bunch of the big schools wrote a common letter and released it saying, we don't train our journalists to do this. This is antithetical to the ethics and the professional standards. I ran the journalism magnet school for Cincinnati Public Schools, and that's for high school kids, but they left us and went to these journalism schools around the country, the university level. If this had happened while I was there, we would have spent a whole day on this, talking about it in classes, because it's just not how you roll. You don't do this. We'll see what repercussions. And then Sinclair then put out a statement just yesterday or the day before saying to their anchors and their employees, we have to stand strong against this political attack. So they're just such jerks trying to now squirrel it into a political attack on them. It's a journalism attack on them. It doesn't matter whether they're right-wing, left-wing, moderates. You just don't write a corporate statement and then have anchors, as you say, looking like, look, if this never got out into a national thing, the Cincinnati audience watching Cammie Deerking, one anchor, and Rob Braun, the other anchor, they would think that they wrote this because they would have no relationship reference point.
Yep.
But this wasn't written by them, nor the person in Spokane, Washington, or Des Moines, Iowa. So I don't know where it goes. They're trying to buy the Tribune stations, and they're waiting for approval. And one guesses they'll get it because it's from the Trump administration, and they're all friends. So I don't know that this will trip that up or not. But
again, Sinclair can do it, but they should do it.
Be transparent.
With transparency.
Be transparent about who's writing this.
Yeah.
That's all.
And that's right. Who's writing this, and maybe be so transparent as to say this message is being. I mean, you really want to be transparent. Don't leave it on us to figure it out. Oh, we're all sitting in one city. You want to tell the truth? The truth is, we wrote this. We sent it to 400 local anchors to read the exact same words across the country. No, there's the truth. Mm-hmm. They didn't do that. That had to get forced out, drawn out by people who saw it a different way. Yeah. Pretty crazy.
Yes, it is.
Jerry, we seem to be creeping closer and closer. Some say, as Donald Trump would say, a lot of people are saying, creeping closer to impeachment. I mean, we used to scoff at that 2 months ago, 6 months ago, but what do you think?
With the continuing breaking news literally every day now, suggesting that either Trump is destroying the presidency or undermining our institutions, and the rule of law, it is always tempting for those of us on the more liberal side of the political spectrum. It's always tempting for us to be induced by billionaire Tom Steyer's ads that you've seen on television, where he calls for the impeachment of the president. And, you know, you sit there and you listen to what he says and you think of all the things Trump has done, and there's a part of us that goes, yeah, man, that's what we ought to be doing, etc. But clearly it is red meat for those on the more liberal side of the political spectrum. The impeaching of Trump. Will he last 4 years? What's going to happen now? But I would say, don't be sidetracked. The issue now cannot be the impeachment of Donald Trump. The issue now has to be the election of a Democratic Congress and Senate. That, in political terms, has to be the only thing we focus on. And the reason for that is that, as I said, I think last week, unless you have a Democratic Congress, all of these ideas, whether it's gun legislation, DACA, the environment, education, health, healthcare, all of the things that a progressive America would care about, in fact, most Americans care about, never even come up for a vote because every committee is chaired by a Republican and controlled by the Speaker of the House, who now is obviously not going to be there next time. So nothing will get done on this agenda unless we have a Democratic Congress. Don't even think about impeachment. Nothing is going to be done in terms of the policies that we care about. So the only political issue this year is to win the Democratic Congress and the Democratic Senate. I'm suggesting that talk of impeachment will hurt our chances of winning. The mere talk of it. Why? Well, right now, there's not a lot of excitement among Republicans. The intensity of their support for their own party is diminished by all these news stories. It's not that they suddenly became Democrats, it's that they're just not that excited about every day another bad story about what's going on. So they're not really psyched up to come out and vote this November. But if the Republicans can frame this election as a referendum on whether the president should be impeached, I promise you this will happen. Number one, we have given the Republicans the greatest money-raising tool you can think of. Now they've got something to raise money for, because they will tell their people, if the Democrats get in, this will be a coup. They will try to undo what happened in this past election, and they will try to impeach our president. So you don't have to think he's real polite or he's got a lot of social graces or any of that. But the election was held, the Republicans, the president. If you let the Democrats win, there'll be an institutional coup, and they will vote to impeach the president. That, among the Republican base I'm just talking about, will really get them jacked up to give money, go out and campaign, show up and vote. That is a reality. Then you have the moderates, people that would this time probably vote Democrat, but they don't like the idea of impeachment. They just think it's not a good idea for the country. That if every few years, when you don't like the electoral results, when your candidate loses, you find some reason to go through the chaos of an impeachment, as happened with Bill Clinton. And so some very reasonable people will say, you know what? Trump won, not happy about it. We'll have to do better next election. But this country can't afford every 2 years to have an impeachment battle. The 1 year you have the presidential election, you don't take the results, you don't like the results, then start a movement to impeach. Because you can always find some issue and make it a big issue and say, we got to impeach. And so we'll lose moderates as well. The result is that the Democrats will not win the House and the Senate this time. If this election is a referendum on impeachment, Democrats will lose because of the Republican base and because all those moderates and even some Democrats who just don't think impeachment is the way for our government to run. We start to look like a banana republic if every 2 years we're having an attempt to throw out the man in power or the woman in power. And even if Dems do win this November, the Republicans that managed to get through will now be emboldened. They'll say, even in spite of the Democratic wave, I got elected, so in my district, so I can stay really conservative and Republican. That's what my people want. And so you will never wind up with a 2/3 vote in the Senate that you need to throw him out of office. Even if you get impeachment, you won't get a conviction. So what was all that about? And finally, and this may be the worst part, remember what happened when they impeached Bill Clinton. They impeached him, obviously didn't get anywhere near the 2/3 vote necessary in the Senate, and Bill Clinton became more popular than at any time in his presidency. And if he was allowed to run for a third time, every poll show he would have won in a landslide. Because all of a sudden, the impeachment process looks like a partisan political battle where the losing party has sour grapes and is trying to undo it. So Bill Clinton became more popular, and believe me, if there is an impeachment of Trump and he survives it, and he's a master at the media anyway, you know he will look at himself, he will project himself as the victim of a partisan attempt to undo the vote of the people. No Republican will run against him in the primaries, and Donald Trump will be president for another 4 years. If you don't want that to happen, stop talking about impeachment. The only way impeachment will work is if it organically, on its own, comes from the Republican Party that says, we can't have this man as president of the United States. Let the Republicans do it, if it's that clear of a crime, and then the Democrats can go along. But it can't be a Democratic-led or Democrat Party-led effort.
Thank you, Jerry. And back to our show again, Mr. Justin Lynch. Justin, you can come on. There he is. Hey, Justin.
Yeah.
Welcome back, sir. Thank you for having me back. Yeah, so what have you been up to since last we spoke?
Oh, music and making art and stuff.
Yeah?
Oh, sorry. Making music and making art and stuff and learning how to use microphones finally, apparently.
So what are you currently working on? Do you have any new music coming out, new albums?
I am working on trying. Well, got a couple of songs that a producer from television shows looking at maybe using, doing a Western.
Cool.
Filming up in Ohio.
There.
Writing and recording stuff and trying to assemble an ensemble sort of thing. And I also do illustration and design work. I do the artwork for the folk schools concert series too.
Yeah.
And so,
Very, very cool. So this evening for us, you have the first song you're going to be singing is You in His Eyes. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm going to do that.
All right. Justin Lynch, ladies and gentlemen.
Left the dog and took his life. He left a pale mistress and a paler bride. He left it all and gave it away. And I didn't know him anyway. To me it was strange. And it's as good as any day to dirty, clean slate. But from the knife I shall refrain. They said we can see you in his eyes. said we can see you in his eyes. But I can't see me in your eyes. They seem to think otherwise. Well, said the rocking chair prophet to the widow's son, there ain't no preacher in this town seen more weddings than my shotgun. But he was far too young to understand that one. So they said we can see you in his eyes. They said we can see you in his eyes. But I can't see me in your eyes. They seem to think otherwise. There's a place not far from this town. It's a place where trains go to die. It's a place where the lovers go to the trees. They go to carve initials with their knives. To me you were strange, and it's as good as any day. Too dirty, a clean slate. But from the knife, yes, from the knife from the night I shall refrain. 'Cause they said we can see you in his eyes. 'Cause they said we can see you in his eyes. But I can't see me in your eyes. They seem to think otherwise.
Bravo!
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Justin, how long? I know you've been playing for a long, long time. How long have you been playing music exactly?
19 years
Yeah.
now? About?
Yeah.
Almost 20. Mm-hmm.
Where can we go to check out some more of your music?
SoundCloud.
Okay.
Is Justin Lynch and the Skywriters is currently doing business as or trade as, I guess. Yeah. That last song is from a record from for a band I used to play in called Wojo. Me and my wife went and saw a couple of Appalachian writers speak at the Mercantile Library last Friday, and a guy named Robert Gipe, and really piqued my interest. And it kind of made me want to do that. This song, "In Your Eyes," is sort of the whole idea of it was sort of the stigma of like mental illness in rural families, and how that, you know, some probably kind of one of the harder things to I guess rise above, and that is like the stigma of that being, you know, something that is genetic in your family, you know, sort of thing.
Wow.
So that was
Very
that. But
It's powerful. Good for you.
Thank you. But I you know, I don't know. But I was just sort of
Thinking about
inspired to play that.
Very cool.
Because I don't have anything new that I want to share yet. But
Still working on it.
so there you go.
Anyway, that's
so
fine.
song-
I won't tell you what's on my mind.
Great. Yeah, someone
Great.
I just read somewhere. Someone said, you know, Lord, bear me with my unfinished jams, kind of thing. All right. So this song I'm going to play. The second one I'll do is a song called Miss Ingalls, and there's a section of Route 8 not far from here, down in Campbell County, called the Ingalls Memorial Highway, and that's what this is. It's kind of about there. When I lived in Bellevue, it was an awful car wreck with a bunch of high school kids, and I kind of wrote this about that, I guess. So it's really uplifting, and it's a dance tune. No, I'm just kidding. It's a sad waltz, and that's what I'm here for, and to make the good sound feel better, sort of thing. But anyway. Well, Miss Singles, don't you ride the boys home. Summer days grow weary with the way the coach runs late, and it must have strayed, and I fear that the worst is to come. Well, Miss Singles, don't you carry them away. Too many souls haunt this road, and all your suitors dressed fine and taken before their time, and I fear that the worst is to come. Miss Ingalls, won't you lay a peaceful rest and make merciful the sleep those that you take on old number 8, and quiet the sorrow in our homes, and quiet the sorrow in our souls.
Good.
Thank you, Justin. Again, you can check him out. Sorry, Jerry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, that is great stuff.
Really beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Jerry. I appreciate it.
We're going to take it down a notch and let Jerry jump in with you.
That's not fair. 2 notches.
We're a little down by the riverside here, Justin. We thank you for being back with us, and yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you again.
Well, thank you very
Good.
much, and let's take it on out, I guess. I'm gonna lay down my heavy load down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my heavy load down by the riverside, and I'm gonna sing war no more.
Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't
You've
gonna
been listening
study-
to Tales, Tunes, and Tomfoolery, recorded live at the Folk School Coffee Parlor in Ludlow, Kentucky. Thanks to Patrick Kennedy for writing our opening song, and to you for listening. Check out our website at jerryspringer.com.